I prepared a little speech that deals with some of the issues that I'm concerned with as a journalist or a former journalist and the head of a nonprofit that tries to promote quality journalism around the world. And I called it Global Digital Journalism, a Transformative Moment. The digital journalism revolution has created a revolution in journalism across the planet. And certainly there's a global digital divide between the developed and the developing world. But even so, the internet is changing how news is delivered and covered in the developing world. Let me give you some examples. There are bloggers in Egypt who are posting videos of torture victims. There are Guatemalan community radio stations that are now starting to use the web to create a platform on which they can create a network and share content. There are citizen journalists in Mexico who are broadcasting crackdowns on protesters that would never have been covered before. So we see that this is an incredibly important moment, and access to information technology is really key for journalists in these countries. Now, the world's growing interconnectedness has sweeping consequences for journalism. We've seen the advent of larger and larger mass media organizations whose owners' primary business is not necessarily journalism. News cycles have shrunk from days to hours and even minutes, leaving journalists with even less time to make very difficult ethical decisions. In whatever platform the news is delivered, the web, newspapers, TV, cell phones, journalism ethics remains an integral part of what we do if journalists hold themselves to high ethical principles. In the West, the rise of the internet has turned a highly developed media on its head. I'm sure you've had discussions with journalists these days. You know what I'm talking about. What happens when this transformative technology affects countries where an independent media is just beginning to develop? All of us need to be aware of the effect of the growth of information technology in such regions and what an absence of quality can mean. It can mean the difference between a free society and an unfree one, the difference between justice and injustice, the difference between an informed citizenry and one that is deceived by government propaganda. These differences are truly enormous. We all know what good standards are and what quality is in traditional newspaper journalism. But what are the best practices when it comes to citizen journalism and the blogosphere? There are trailblazers around the world. You all know of Oh My News in South Korea. But it behooves us to figure out what constitutes quality information in an effort to promote it in a fast-changing digital environment. At ICFJ, we're trying to help journalists navigate this new terrain. On a much larger scale, we just signed an agreement with the University of Guadalajara to create the first digital journalism center in Latin America. This comes in response to unending requests from Latin American news organizations for deeper understanding of how to produce quality journalism on the web. And our latest IJNet offering is an interactive guide on how to produce a quality blog for journalists in the developing world.